Responsibilities of Landlords Tenants Act 2017, a cross-section analysis. About Mr. P.B. Balaji, sir. Sir is an alumni of PSBB and he studied his law degree from the prestigious Madras Law College, and he started his practice under his father, Mr. P.V. Ramanujam, and he's a good orator and a guest lecturer in Tamil Nadu Judicial Academy, and he is also an associate editor to the CTC groups of law journals. We are welcoming you, sir. And we have one instructions to the participants.
Shankar, we are not able to hear you. Okay, let's begin. Balaji sir, we can begin.
Yes, I'll take over. Yes.
Yes, sir.
At the very outset, happy May Day to all of you. I hope this May will release us from the lockdown at least and do away with all the problems that the country and the entire world have been going through the last few weeks. Today, I'm going to take you to the sections of the Tamil Nadu Regulation of Rights and Responsibilities of Landlords and Tenants Act 2017. Many of you may have had the benefit of my talks about 10 days back, which was more a comparison between the old act and the new act, and it catered to the common man also. Today I would like to restrict it to the legal circle, and we will analyze the various sections of the new act. I'm not going to differentiate between the old act and the new act, because otherwise it will become a repetition. So let us see what the act is about. Why was it brought into force? See, as you all know, until from 1960 to 2016 or 17, the Rent Control Act prevailed. That is the Tamil Nadu Buildings Lease and Rent Control Act 1860 was holding fort. The government felt an urgent need that the law has to be revisited. In fact, the central government, under the Housing for All scheme, mandated all states to come up with a new Tenancy Act. In fact, they suggested a Model Tenancy Act in 2015 first. 2015, a Model Tenancy Act, which was followed by a 2017 Model Tenancy Act. And again in 2019, another Model Tenancy Act has been suggested. Interestingly, our state of Tamil Nadu is the only state which has, in fact, taken cue from the Model Tenancy Acts suggested by the central government and has brought about the legislation in 2017. Many of you, I would like this, you may take this as a piece of advice, because even after my call, after my lecture last fortnight, I had a number of calls raising questions with regard to the 2017 Act, and what I have stated was different in my lecture. The problem is Act 39 of 2018 brought about drastic amendments to the 2017 Act. Most of them are not aware of that. So please follow the Act 39 of 2018, which has amended the original Act of 2017, Act 42 of 2017. Because if you follow Act 42 of 2017, you may not be in tune with the reality. Because Act 39 of 2018 has made several changes, but for mere glance, you may not find the differences also. So I would advise you to get the latest Act 39 of 2018. The Act has been brought into force on 22nd of February 2019. The rules also have come into place on that date. See, the object of the Act, as I told you, was the government felt there was enough housing stock available and the real estate sector had really picked up, and there was no necessity for landlords being put at an unfair disadvantage because of the controls exercised under the old Act. And they wanted the free market forces to prevail, the contract to prevail, basically. Therefore, contract was given predominance under the new Act. Control, which was sought to be exercised under the old Act, was removed. So the importance under the significance of the new Act, if if you see the entire scheme of the Act, all the provisions, respect is given to the contract between the parties. The control exercised by law previously has been totally removed. So therefore, rightly, it is now called regulation and balancing. They want to just regulate the contract between the parties and not control the contract between the parties. As I told you, on 22nd of February 2019, the Act has come into force. There have been subsequent minor amendments to the Act to probably correct small errors and give timelines for persons to register their contracts, etc. So I'll take you to some of the important provisions of the Act. Section 1, as we all know, is the title and the date of commencement. As I told you, it has been notified and it has come into force on 22nd of February 2019. Section 2 is the definition clause, definition section. It defines landlord, tenant, premises, and importantly, you should remember the Act applies to buildings which have been let out to residential or non-residential purposes, for non-residential purposes in urban areas only. So what are urban areas is also defined under Section 2. Urban areas include municipal towns, municipalities, and cantonments also. Panchayats, village, town panchayats are also included, but village panchayats are not coming under the definition of urban areas. Therefore, we have a village panchayat, the building lease in a village panchayat, this Act will not apply. They will be governed by the provisions of the Transfer of Property Act only. So Section 2 also defines who is a landlord, who is a tenant. Landlord is a person who is entitled to receive rent. So he need not be the owner. So all landlords need not be owners. Owner may be a landlord, but vice versa need not be true always. And he includes a person who is acting as a trustee or a guardian or an agent for a person who cannot enter into a contract. Similarly, tenant includes a person who is entitled to pay rent. It includes his legal heirs who have been staying with the tenant in case of residential properties and who have been associated with the business in the case of non-residential properties. Here there is a distinction made in the definition of tenant. Tenant does not include a person against whom an order of eviction has been passed. So this you will have to keep in note. If suppose under the old Act proceedings have been taken and an eviction order has been passed, is pending in appeal or revision, that person will not qualify to be a tenant under the new Act. Therefore, you cannot choose to abandon the earlier proceedings and file a fresh application under the new Act. Section 3 deals with the exceptions to the Act. What are the exceptions? The properties, premises owned by government. The government, wherever is the landlord, Act will not apply. Similarly, where a university or a company lets out as part of its service, as part of service contract, a premises belonging to the company is let out to the employee or the faculty, then that is not coming under the purview of the Act. And any government has got power to notify any temples or religious charitable institutions to not come within the purview of that. So far, this power has not been exercised, unlike where in the old Act, GOMS 2000 was passed, invoking Section 29. Then works, registered works and trusts under the Trust Act are exempted. But however, strangely, if you see, all the exempted categories of landlords are given an option to come under the purview of the Act voluntarily. If they feel they are better off under the new Act instead of going under the Transfer of Property Act, they can submit the rental agreement or tenancy agreement, as we call it, under the new Act with the rent authority, and you can avail the benefits of the new Act. So these are in respect to the exemptions. Section 4 deals with the tenancy agreement. This is the important feature in the new Act. Tenancy agreement. What is a tenancy agreement? It is basically the lease agreement between the landlord and the tenant, which is contemplated for any lease. But under Section 4, now it shall be lawful only if the tenancy agreement is in writing. So straight away we can say that the oral agreements are not applicable. You have to enter into a tenancy agreement in writing, and the tenancy agreement is required to be registered with the rent authority. There are time frames given. So suppose there is already a subsisting tenancy agreement in writing. From the date of commencement of the Act, initially a period of 90 days was given for registering the tenancy agreement. But now that period has been extended, and today as it stands, we have time till 20th of September 2020. So you have some more time to register your existing tenancy agreements. Suppose the agreement is entered into subsequent to the commencement of the act, that is on and after 22nd of February 2019, you will have to register the agreement within 90 days. The rules provide for that. Now, within 90 days, you will have to register new tenancies. Therefore, you have time. If you have an agreement executed in February, you have time till June. Therefore, these are the rules provided for registration of tenancy agreement. Then the rent authority is directed to upload all your tenancy details in the website. There's a website which caters only to the sections of the public, namely the landlords and tenants, where all your details of the landlord, tenant, the tenancy agreement, the period of lease, rent revision, all these details will be uploaded by the rent authority under section 4. He has to do it within particular time frames. And 4A is a very interesting provision. It deals with the effect of non-registration as contemplated under section 4. If you fall back on section 49 of the Registration Act, you will see that section 49 has a similar provision. It states that the agreement will not be of any effect. The terms of the agreement cannot be used as evidence in any court legal proceedings. But however, in section 49, an exception was given to suits for specific performances and for collateral purposes. But here under section 4 capital A, those exemptions are not available. So what we find only is there's no power the document confers, and the parties cannot rely upon the terms of the agreement in a court of law. So this issue came up for consideration before the Honorable High Court in judgment reported in 2019, 6 CTC, page 9, in Manimegalai versus Kannan, I think. Manimegalai versus Ajay Kannan, whatever. In that case, the Honorable High Court said, merely because your agreement is not registered, the landlord cannot be disentitled from invoking the provisions of the new act. See, what fell for consideration before the Honorable High Court was, a contract, as we all know, needs two parties. So without two parties, no contract is complete. So 2019, 6 CTC, page 9. Justice Suresh Kumar's judgment, 2019, 6 CTC, page 9. So what fell for consideration before the Honorable High Court and what weighed in the mind of the learned judge was, a contract needs two parties. Without one, contract is not complete. So there may be cases where a landlord does not want to enter into an agreement because he wants the tenant to vacate. He may have unsuccessfully tried under the old act to evict the tenant, and this is an opportunity for him. So you cannot expect that landlord to come and say, I want an agreement, or please come and enter into an agreement, we'll register it, because he's giving a new fresh lease of life to the tenant. Similarly, a tenant, suppose he'll take a case of a tenant who's not paying rents for last 2 years. So if he is going to be invited for entering into a fresh tenancy agreement, we can only call the landlord a fool. So he is giving him another lease of life for 11 months minimum, or say 1 year or 2 years, and inviting further default for that period. So therefore, you cannot expect such a landlord to call upon the tenant to come and register the agreement. All these factors weighed, coupled with the fact that there was no necessity for introduction of section 4A at all in the act. Why should if it was mandatory, the legislature would not have inserted 4 capital A to say that the terms of the agreement cannot be used in evidence. So all these factors collectively were taken into consideration by the Honorable Judge, and finally he held that the landlord can approach the court, invoke statutory provisions to seek eviction of the tenant. However, with a rider. The rider is naturally, the terms of the agreement cannot be enforced by the landlord or the tenant. Therefore, it is advisable to register your agreement, the horse of judgment given by the Honorable High Court. Because if you want to rely upon specific terms of the agreement for, say, renewal or increase in rent or use of some particular area, all these you cannot enforce unless your agreement is registered. You will also not be able to take benefit of the other sections under the Act if your agreement is not registered. This is section 4 capital A. Section 5 is dealing with the period of tenancy. So here again, as I told you, the Act, the intention of the legislature is to give paramount importance to the contract between the parties. So period of tenancy naturally is governed by what agreement the landlord and tenant enter into. If you say 3 years, it will be for a period of 3 years. Suppose the agreement contemplates a renewal after a particular period, that also will be honored. What happens in the case of no period of extension mentioned in the agreement? The landlord, before 3 months of the expiry, should intimate the tenant that either he wants the tenant to vacate or this is the rent he wants. If the tenant is agreeable to the rent demanded by the landlord, he will enter into an agreement. If the tenant is not agreeable, he will face the consequences of being evicted under 21(2). And this is section 5. Again, the increase and whatever will be governed only by the terms of the agreement. What are the terms of increase of rent? When is it payable? All these will be governed only by section 5, which gives paramount significance to the contract, the tenancy agreement between the parties. Then section 6 is inheritability of tenancy. So here again, it basically includes the legal heirs of the landlord and tenant who will be entitled to continue the terms of the lease and come within the purview of the act. Section 7 restricts unauthorized subletting. Subletting is possible only with the concurrence of the landlord. So therefore, that is section 7. Section 8 is the rent. It defines the rent payable. Section 8 is rent payable is again the rent agreed upon between the parties. That will be the rent payable. Suppose the agreement comes to a lapse and it is not renewed. What is the effect? The act says the existing last paid rent will be the rent for a period of 6 months on a month-to-month basis. And thereafter, the landlord will be entitled to invoke provisions of section 21(2) and say there is no agreement, vacate. So therefore, if the parties do not enter into a renewed agreement, the existing agreement will continue only for a period of 6 months as if it is a month-to-month rental agreement. This is section 8. Section 9 and 10 deal with the revision of rent. Here again, the amendment in 2018 caused some confusion. The Act 42 of 2017 originally said the rent authority has the power to revise rent. We stopped with that. But Act 39 of 2018 went further and said, section 9, rent authority has the power to revise the rent in accordance with the terms of the tenancy agreement between the parties. So here again, the rent authority's hands are curbed. He cannot decide on his own. He is bound by the terms of the agreement. So it is not, you cannot equate it with the fixation of fair rent. Therefore, section 9 and 10 do not give the rent authority a power to fix fair rent. He will only decide in a dispute arising out of the contract. See, suppose the tenant says, no, this increase is only from February, not January. Landlord says, no, from January you have to pay the increase. That dispute will be decided by the rent authority. He cannot fix rent on his own, which we call fair rent under the old Act. This is section 9 and 10. Section 11 is security deposit. Here again, it is very interesting to note a distinction drawn between security deposit and advance. The term advance is independently used in other sections. Security deposit is used in section 11 as also in other sections. So section 11 starts with save as provided in the agreement. Therefore, if the agreement again stipulates something different, the agreement will prevail. That is the scheme of the Act. Give importance to the agreement. Therefore, the agreement will prevail if there is a contract to the contrary. So save as provided in the agreement means whatever the parties have agreed will be respected. Suppose there is no agreement on security deposit. The law says, section 11 says, you cannot collect more than 3 months rent as security deposit. So, but if you have an agreement saying the security deposit will be 7 months, 8 months, it is valid, it is legal. You need not be afraid. That is section 11. Section 12 says a copy of the agreement should be given to the tenant after the registration by the rent authority. 13, which receipts to be given by the landlord for all payments made, including rent and other charges. That is section 13. Section 14 is deposit of rents with the rent authority. Let's assume a case where the landlord refuses to receive rent for whatever reason. If the refusal continues for 2 months, the rent authority has the power to enable the tenant to deposit the rents before him and will decide, adjudicate on the disputes later on. So it's the case of deposit of rents under section 14. 15 deals with repairs and maintenance. So what are the obligations of the landlord? What are the obligations of the tenant? There is a separate schedule given where the obligations are set out. The major repairs and structural changes on all other aspects will be the landlord's burden. Small repair of wash basins and fixing of lights, tubes, replacement of bulbs, all these issues will come under the obligations of tenant. They have been specifically set out in the schedule to the Act. Then section 16 mandates the tenant to look after the premises. So tenant has to ensure that he does not cause any damage or waste to the property. Property is maintained in good repairs. Then section 17 deals with entry with notice. So the landlord can enter the property. His property manager can enter the property on giving a prior notice to the tenant that I am going to inspect the property on such and such a date. Then this concept of property manager is new, which is not available under the old rent legislation. The landlord can appoint a property manager to take care of all his properties, and he can empower the property manager to enter into an agreement, collect rent, visit the property, deal with the tenant, discuss various modalities of increase of rent, maintenance of the property. So all these are the powers of the property manager if delegated by the landlord. So the sections 18 and 19 deal with the role of the property manager. Section 20 is cutting off of essential supply or service. If suppose the landlord or the tenant, this section interestingly applies to both landlord and tenant. It's not limited to tenant, unlike the old act where the landlord had cut off an essential supply, tenant has to approach the rent controller. Here the tenant or the landlord can approach the rent authority to restore supply or service. For example, water supply, light in the passage, lift service, or sanitation, or whatever. All these is expanded now. The concept of basic amenities is now expanded to essential supply and service. Then 21 is the most important section under the Act. It deals with repossession of the property by the landlord from the tenant. What are the grounds? The first ground is failure to enter into a tenancy agreement as contemplated under section 4.2. So we have already seen section 4. If there is no rental agreement and the period has also lapsed for entering into an agreement, the landlord is well within his rights to seek eviction on that ground alone. He can merely say, I don't want the tenant to continue. I have not entered into an agreement. There is no tenancy agreement in place. Therefore, I am invoking section 21(2)(a). That is the first ground. 21(2)(b) deals with default. If the tenant commits default for a period of 2 months, the landlord has to call upon the tenant by issuance of a notice under section 106, the Transfer of Property Act. And in spite of the notice, if the tenant does not pay up the arrears of rent or other charges, the landlord is entitled to invoke 21(2)(b) and seek eviction on the ground of default. However, here, a benefit is given to the tenant. The tenant, after the receipt of notice in the eviction action by the landlord, after following the procedure, giving notice, etc., if he pays up the entire arrears of rent within 30 days, then the eviction petition will be dismissed. So this is a very good benefit given to the tenants to make up the arrears and get the eviction action dismissed. However, a tenant cannot avail of this benefit more than once in a particular year. That is also provided as a proviso. Then the usual acts of waste, acts of nuisance are now termed as misuse of property. Again, subletting, unauthorized subletting is a ground for eviction. Misuse of property by encroaching into additional space not let out or causing damage to the property, all this will come within the mischief of acts of misuse of property. This is a ground for eviction. Owner's occupation is now again a ground for eviction under 21(2)(g). Owner's occupation, demolition and reconstruction or repairs, all these are grounds which are available to the landlord. Another important inclusion in 21 is, suppose the tenant had given a notice to vacate, and based on that the landlord contracts to sell the property to a third party, but thereafter tenant does not vacate. That is a ground for eviction. The landlord can approach the court and say, tenant had agreed to vacate. In fact, he issued a notice to quit. Thereafter, I have contracted to sell the property, but still the tenant has not vacated, therefore give me possession. This is yet another ground under 21(2). Section 22 deals with recovery of possession for occupation. It gives time frames for, suppose there is a special category of landlords under section 22, like senior citizens, widows, single women, divorcees, and persons who have retired from the army, navy, these persons are styled as special categories of landlords. So they have given one step higher benefit under the Act. No, in case of senior citizens, no time need be given for the tenant to vacate. Whereas for regular landlords, a period of 3 months or 1 month can be given in depending on the facts of the case. But for special categories of landlords, no time need be given for the tenant to vacate when the order of eviction is passed. 23 is an important section. It provides for compensation in cases of non-vacancy. So if the tenant does not vacate in spite of notice to quit or an order of court or the determination of the tenancy agreement, the tenant is liable to pay double the rent. Suppose the tenant was paying 10,000, an order of eviction is passed, tenant continues in occupation for 3 months. He has to pay 20,000 for the said 3 months. So here again there is a catch. If you want to take benefit of the determination of tenancy, unless the tenancy agreement has a clause to this effect, or at least the tenancy agreement is registered, you may not be strictly able to take benefit of section 23 as a landlord. So therefore, even from this angle, it is better to get the tenancy agreement registered. See, one reason why the tenancy agreements were not being registered was the costs were very prohibited in Tamil Nadu, very prohibitive in Tamil Nadu. The 1% of the total rent for the entire period was being collected as stamp duty, and the registration fee of 25,000, a maximum of 25,000 was being collected, which the landlords felt it is very expensive and not worthwhile registering the agreements. But now the Tamil Nadu government in the latest budget has drastically reduced the stamp duty insofar as registration of lease in respect of residential properties alone. So up to a period of 5 years, if your tenancy agreement is to be registered, you pay only 0.25%. 0.25% instead of 1%. Therefore, straightaway slash by 4. Similarly, the registration fee is capped at 5,000 maximum instead of 25,000. But this is applicable only to residential leases and not non-residential leases. This is more to encourage people to come and register their tenancy agreements. The motive behind the reduction by the Tamil Nadu government. This is section 25. 23. 24 deals with refund of advance. The section 11 we saw security deposit. 24 deals with advance. Therefore, the Act intends to make a distinction between security deposit and advance. If the advance is collected by the landlord, in addition to security deposit, there is no cap again on how much advance you should collect because it is the contract between the parties. The same has to be refunded by the landlord when the tenant vacates. What if it does not refund? The Act says the tenant landlord has to pay 8% interest. 8% has been fixed by the rules at rate fixed. Subsequently, is what the Act says. The rules have now fixed the rate at 8% per annum, simple interest. The landlord will have to pay 8% per annum for the delayed period in not refunding the advance. Similarly, the tenant commits default and he does not pay rent for 6 months. He is also equally liable to pay interest for the defaulted amount at the same rate of 8% per annum. And section 25 is payment of rent during eviction proceedings. This is again very curiously, there are some omissions to section 25, which we will discuss briefly. Section 25 says during eviction proceedings, tenant has to pay rents without any default. But 21(2)A and 21(2)B are been removed. So except in cases of 21(2)A and 21(2)B, all other provisions under 21, the tenant has to pay rents under section 25 pending the eviction proceedings. The 21(2)A as we saw is where there is no agreement. 21(2)B is default. So even when the landlord comes to court seeking eviction on the ground of default in payment of rents, he is not entitled to an order under section 25 because 25 excludes 21(2)A and 21(2)B. I am at a loss to understand the intent behind this omission of 21(2)A and 21(2)B under section 25. Anyhow, we'll have to see how this section is being interpreted, or the government itself realizes and comes up with suitable amendments. 26, 27 are new provisions. 26 enables a landlord to approach the rent court and seek for permission to build additional structures. Suppose the building has 2 floors. Landlord wants to construct a 3rd floor. naturally tenant is not going to object because he is going to be inconvenienced. In such cases, rent court can direct the landlord to put up an additional construction subject to his obtaining a planning permission. 27 enables the landlord to exploit vacant space in and around the demise building. Suppose there is a 3-ground property. The building is constructed only on half a ground of land. So the landlord wants to exploit the available vacant land because there is good potential for rents, or he wants to occupy it himself. He can approach the rent court and say, this is my plan, this is my scheme, please permit me to put up construction in the vacant space. The rent court will decide and reduce the rent for which has been paid by the tenant, because he is going to be enjoying a lesser area if this order is going to be passed and landlord is permitted to exploit the vacant space. But interesting, in 26, there is no such provision for reduction of rent. Only in 27, where the vacant area is exploited, rent court is called upon to decide rent afresh. But under section 26, no such similar provision is available. This again is a grey area which will need to be addressed. Because definitely, even if an additional floor is put up, the tenant is going to be inconvenienced and his area may come down. His comfort zone definitely is not going to be the same as it was before. And 28 says vacant possession to landlord. So possession is to be given to the landlord, whoever is in occupation, subtenant or a permissive occupant through the tenant, anybody, all persons in occupation are bound by the order of eviction passed in favor of the landlord, and the landlord is entitled to seek possession. Then section 29, the provision where notice is given voluntarily by the tenant giving up possession. The tenant can invoke section 29 and say, suppose there is a clause in the agreement which says 2 months notice in case of earlier determination of the lease should be given, tenant should invoke 29. Or if there is no period fixed in the agreement, it is a 30-day notice which is contemplated under this section. The tenant has to give a 30-day notice and say, I am going to vacate by so and so date. That is section 29. Section 30. Now let us examine the various structure under the Act, the authorities, the judicial structure provided under the Act, before I go over to section 30 onwards. There is a 3-tier. The rent authority is the person who collects the data from the parties, registers the tenancy agreement. That is the first role of the rent authority. Second role we saw is, in case there is a dispute in regard to the rent payable revision in rent as per the terms of the agreement, the rent authority will decide. That is the second role of the rent authority. And restoration of deposit of rents. Suppose the landlord refuses to receive rent, or there is a bona fide dispute with regard to who is to get the rent. Suppose there are legal heads fighting for the rent after the demise of the landlord. There is a bona fide dispute. Tenant can approach the rent authority and ask for suitable orders. This is the second authority of the rent authority, second role of the rent authority. Then the restoration amenities. The restoration amenities also goes before the rent authority only. Either the landlord or the tenant can approach deposit of rents. These are the powers of the rent authority. It is only limited to these powers which he can act. Any order passed by the rent authority, an appeal lies to the rent court. So the first appeal will lie to the rent court. All proceedings for eviction are only before the rent court and not before the rent authority. So if you want to seek eviction, if you want to seek invoke provisions of 26, 27, the special provisions to enable landlord to make use of the vacant land or put up additional structures, all these applications are only before the rent court. So any eviction action under section 21 is only before the rent court. So rent court is acting as an appellate authority for appeals from rent authority and also of original jurisdiction with regard to eviction petitions. Then there's a rent tribunal. The rent tribunal sits on appeal over the orders of the rent court. This is a 3-tier. So insofar as the rent authorities are concerned, even in May 2019, rent authorities have been designated by the government, deputy collectors, etc. have been appointed to be the rent authorities all over the state of Tamil Nadu. Rent courts also have been designated. The existing rent controllers have been designated as rent courts, and the principal district municip or additional district municip in other districts will be acting as the rent courts insofar as their jurisdiction is concerned. Insofar as rent tribunals are concerned, till date, no rent tribunal has been constituted. This is under process, is what I understand. Now let us see section 30. Section 30 deals with the appointment of rent authority. And 31 deals with the power and procedure of the rent authority. So rent authority under section 31 will have the same powers that have been conferred on the rent court and rent tribunal to carry out their various functions under the act. Then 32 is constitution of the rent court. The rent court, as we saw, it will be a member of judicial service. Qualification to be a rent court will be a member of judicial service. The act also provides that the government can appoint any existing court as a rent court, which has been done in all cases in the state of Tamil Nadu, appointing the rent controllers and the district councils as the rent courts. Then powers, procedure. Then 34 is the 33 is the appeals. Appeals we saw. Rent authority to rent court is the section 33. Jurisdiction of rent court, section 34. The jurisdiction of rent court will be in matters pertaining to the tenancy disputes only, and the rent courts are to be bound by the letter and spirit of the substantive laws like the Contract Act, Transfer of Property Act, etc. So the built-in provisions are given for the functioning of the rent court. So definitely the procedure is a summary procedure, and the authorities need not fall back on the provisions of the Code of Civil Procedure with regard to the disposal of matters under the new act. And jurisdiction rent court, yes, in section 35 is constitution of rent tribunals, which has not happened yet. Procedure of rent court and rent tribunal is set out in 36. They have been given the power to administer evidence, oath, collect, receive proof of rights, permit cross-examination, permit condonation of delay, setting aside ex parte orders. All these come under the provisions of powers of rent court and rent tribunal. Then 38 provides for appeal from the rent court to the rent tribunal, section 38. In section 39 is execution of the order. Here, unlike the old rent legislations, the applicability of CPC has been removed. So what all the act says, the order of eviction or any order executable under the act will be executed in a summary manner by the court concerned, namely the rent court, and from the date of service of notice on the opposite party, within 30 days, the execution process should be completed. In fact, one of the objects which I did not mention to you was fast adjudication of resolution of disputes. That was another object with which the new act has come into force. Therefore, in line with that, execution is to be completed within a period of 30 days. CPC is not made applicable. Therefore, hopefully, the pitfalls under section 21 of order 21 of CPC will not apply to executions under the new act, and landlords and tenants who approach the court for executing orders in their favor should be much easier and quicker. Then jurisdiction of civil court is barred. Now, this is a special enactment. Therefore, jurisdiction of the civil court, insofar as all matters that fall within the purview of the Rent Act are boosted. This is section 40. 41 deals with court fees. Now we used to call eviction petitions. Now we have to call it a suit or an application. So say the section 43, section 41 now mandates that the provisions of the Court Fees Act will apply to proceedings under this act taken before the rent court and the rent tribunal, insofar as matters dealing with disputes between landlords and tenants. So section 43 of the Tamil Nadu Court Fees and Suits Valuation Act will straight away apply to eviction petitions, and court fee will have to be paid at the rate of 3% on 1 year's rent, immediately payable on the date of the institution of the eviction action. Therefore, 3% on 12 months rent would be the rent payable. If there is any premium in addition to the rent, I would distinguish this premium from advance or security deposit, because premium is not defined under the new act anywhere. What all it says is advance and security deposit, but Court Fees Act talks about premium. If there were cases where rent was not at all payable, there was a one-time premium, a lump sum paid by the tenants, it should be refunded. That was called a premium. Therefore, that is the intention of the word used, premium, in Court Fees Act. Therefore, in my opinion, interpretation should be section 43 court fee will be payable for 12 months rent alone. But suppose there is no rent, it's a premium. On the whole of the premium, 3% is what interpretation I will seek to give to section 43 subject to correction. Then 42 and 43 are usual clauses which deals with the who are to be members. Members will be public servants, and officers and employees. What are the role of the officers and employees of the courts and tribunals? And protection of officers taken in good faith is 44. Power of government to make rules under 45. Power to remove difficulties 46. 47 repeals and savings is again an interesting provision. Of course, now today as on date it will not have any application for the reason that the period given is already lapsed. But what the repeal and savings clause originally said was the Tamil Nadu Buildings Lease and Rent Control Act, Act 18 of 1960 is hereby repealed. However, if a plaintiff wants to seek the benefits of the new act, he can choose to withdraw his pending proceedings or appeals before the rent court, before the rent controller under the old act or the appellate authority under the old act within 180 days and come under the new act within 90 days thereafter, 270 days. That period was subsequently extended up to giving a time of 1 year. So that also has now lapsed with February 2020 gone. So that option of withdrawing and coming under the new act is no longer available. But the repeal clause will survive. The act repeals. But however, proceedings which are continuing under the old act will continue. There is no bar. So whatever proceedings are taken before the rent court, rent controller under the old act, the landlord chooses to continue, he can continue. The advantages, suppose for example, fair rent proceedings are pending, he can choose to continue, he need not withdraw. There is no provision for fair rent under the new act. Then there are 3 schedules. The first schedule deals with the form for application before the rent authority. That is the first schedule. The second schedule pertains to sections 15. We saw the liabilities and responsibilities insofar as repairs is concerned. So that 15 now is set out in schedule 2, which consists of 2 parts, part A and part B. Part A sets out the responsibilities of the landlords and part B sets out the responsibilities of tenants. This third schedule is the special category of landlords. I told you earlier that they are given a special status. The time frame for in such cases of special categories of landlords coming to court is either nil or a reduced period. Therefore, that third schedule lists who are the persons who will be the special coming under the special category of landlords. Then the rules also came into place on same day, 22nd of February 2019. They are called the Tamil Nadu Regulation of Rights and Responsibilities of Landlords and Tenant Rules 2019. Section 3 deals with Form 1. For making of an application and timelines for registration of tenancy, Form 1. And Form 2 is set out in Rule 5. Rule 5 deals with expiry or earlier termination of tenancy. Then Form 3 is permission of the rent court for recovery of possession for occupation. Then Form 4, the procedure for applications before the rent authority. Suppose you want to make an application for a deposit of rents or restoration of amenity, you will have to follow Form 4. Form 5 it sets out the procedure for making an application before the rent court, Form 5. The appeals before the rent court from orders of rent authority will be Form 6. Appeals from rent court to rent tribunal, Form 7. So these are the rules in place. So as of now, the time for entering into agreement has been extended up to 20th September. You cannot hereafter withdraw proceedings under the old act. You will have to continue. And if in case, as I already told you, you must remember, if an order of eviction is already passed, the matter is pending in appeal or revision, or landlord has not chosen to execute the order till date, even then such a tenant will not fall under the definition of tenant under the new act. Similarly, premises belonging to factories are also not falling under the definition of the premises under the new act. These are the various sections of the act. I also discussed the rules, and now proceedings are being initiated under the new act. I think first set of eviction orders have also been passed recently. We'll have to wait and see how the objects of the act are being met by the courts interpreting the various sections in favor of the concerned parties, the landlord and the tenants. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was extremely a good session. So, Shankar? Mr. Shankar?
Do you want me to see the questions and answer, or?
Sir, I'll unmute the participants.
Okay.
And before I unmute, Justice Vaidyanathan is there in the session.
Okay.
Let me unmute the Honorable Judge so that if you want, he can say
Sure.
something. Hello? Hello?
Harun sir, I don't think it's audible for him.
Oh.
You're not sure. Okay.
You can, Swati, you can just.
So, questions? I'll just.
And yeah, you can take over.
Madhuri ma'am, you can proceed with your question.
Sir, thank you, sir. Thank you for that session.
Welcome, ma'am.
Sir, I have two questions here, sir.
Yes.
The first question is, most of these tenancy agreements may not have a force majeure clause. I'm talking about a residential tenancy agreement.
Correct.
May not have a force majeure clause.
True.
Now, can a tenant, or a commercial contract also these days may also not have a force majeure clause.
Correct.
So can a tenant now take help of Section 56 of the Indian Contract Act and say that there's some impossibility because I've not been rented your place for 2-3 months now during the lockdown period? Can he take that shelter? That is question one.
Yes.
Question two is, in case you said that if 6 months he's not paying the rent, then there is a the tenancy can be cancelled and then I can invoke this jurisdiction of this enactment. Now 3 months he's not paid rent for me. Can a landlord go back, say 3 months now in the lockdown period and 3 months subsequently also he's not paid? Can I invoke these provisions in this section? These are the two questions, sir.
Yes, force majeure is definitely going to be the next hot topic in the rent courts. I'm sure most of the landlords are going to take advantage of this and complain of default. And of course, notice has to be given. So under the new act, without notice, a tenant cannot be evicted on the ground of default. So Section 106 will have to be invoked. The tenant has an option to make good the arrears. But if he continues to take a risk and not pay the rent and plead force majeure, is one option to the tenant. Section 56, yes, he will be entitled, in my opinion, to take defense under Section 56 of the Contract Act, because the Act itself says the rent court has to be guided by the principles set out under the Contract Act and Transfer Property Act.
Okay.
Therefore, even in the absence of a force majeure clause, well, let us take an agreement which has a force majeure clause, but it is not registered.
Yes.
That clause may not be available to the landlord because the agreement cannot be used as evidence.
Correct.
If it is not registered with the rent authority. Therefore, 56, in my opinion, will come into play because the section provides for that. The rent court is to be guided by the principles of the substantive laws like the Contract Act and the TP Act. So therefore, tenant definitely can plead. Either he can choose to pay up the arrears on notice, or he can take the risk, not pay the arrears, defend the proceedings under force majeure clause.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Next, so Ramya Leo has a question.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Sir, good morning.
Morning.
Sir, hello.
Morning,
Sir,
madam. I'm going to
wonderful session, sir. Sir, actually, I don't have doubt, but Section 41, mine was not audible, sir, at that time. Can you just say what is the premium? 41. Under Section 41, what is the premium under this Code Fees Act, sir?
41 is 3%. Code fee you'll have to pay. Code Fees Act is made applicable to eviction petitions, therefore, and appeals. Therefore, 3% of 1 year's rent will have to be paid as code fee.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It was not audible for me. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Vikram Jain has a question.
Yes, Vikram.
Mr. Vikram?
Hello.
Yes, Vikram.
No, someone else. Okay.
Narayan Swami. This is Narayan Swami, advocate, sir. Very nice
Yes,
session.
sir.
It was very
Thank
much
you,
enlightening to know all these topics. I have a doubt, sir.
Yes, tell me.
Sir, because for a short span the connection was not proper. That's why I have this doubt now.
Okay.
Sir, in some of the cases, I find the tenants or even the landlords refuses to come and get registered under this new act.
Yes.
That I heard that can be the ground for eviction also, right?
Yes, correct. 21(2)(a).
Okay. We have to issue a is there a notice period, sir, for that?
No. 21(2)(a) does not contemplate a notice period. See, but since there is time available
15
under
days.
the statute, today the government has extended time for registering an agreement till February 2020. So if you want to preempt a situation of not entering into an agreement, it is advisable to issue a notice and say, I don't want to enter into an agreement. So foreclose the right of the other party to enter into a tenancy agreement and treat it as a defense, saying that I have time till September to enter into this agreement. Therefore, the application is premature. So to avoid that, better issue a notice and say, I don't want an agreement. Okay.
Like in that case, one more doubt, sir, if you permit.
Yes.
Is that now should we wait for filing the case or institution of proceeding till that time limit given under the act, or we can straight away file if the corona time is over?
You can file provided you give notice, because the tenant, first defense tenant will take is I have time.
Yes.
So foreclose that defense of the tenant, you issue a notice saying that I don't want an agreement. I have decided to get you evicted, so please vacate. Then you can say you need not wait till September. Otherwise, you'll have to wait till September and file an eviction petition after September.
So just to reconfirm, so once the landlord sends a notice asking him to come and register,
yes.
Later on the tenant doesn't reply at all, he can straight away file the case. Right?
No. Suppose after you file the case, tenant says I am ready. He gives some reason. So better issue another notice. Issue another notice saying I gave you an option, you did not avail. Now I am not prepared to enter into an agreement. So that will make the case stronger for the landlord.
I understand. Very kind of you, sir. It was a nice session.
Welcome,
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
I have a question. This is Malini here. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So far as commercial properties is concerned,
yes,
they would have established the business, right?
Correct.
It should be renewed regularly.
Correct.
Whether the stamp duty should be payable for each and every renewal, that will be the same, or any?
I don't understand your question. Renewal?
For renewal, the same duty is applicable for as of original registration.
There is no clarity on that as yet. But if you want to register, naturally you will have to pay. See,
I have a tenant for more than 50 years. If I go for a renewal for once in 2 years, I'll be paying stamp duty for once in 2 years, right?
Correct. That is the law, mandate of the law. So you will have to pay.
Okay, and I have another question. What is the remedy after rent tribunal? Whether any revision appeal is there?
No,
and the limitation?
No. Order of rent tribunal is made final. No appeal or revision against the order of the rent tribunal. The rent tribunal is going to be headed by member of the higher judicial service, which means it will be either a retired judge of the High Court or a district court or a sitting district court. Therefore, the act says it will be finality. With the rent tribunal, no further appeal or revision. But we have seen cases under the Land Reforms Tribunal where such tribunals exist, but writ courts have taken the view that writs are maintainable. Since there is no appeal provided under the statute, appeal or revision, writ petitions can be maintained. So there is a possibility a matter can be agitated by invoking Article 226 of the Constitution.
Thank you.
Advocate Suresh Khanna has a question.
Yes.
Hello.
You can.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Morning, Suresh.
Yeah, I have one doubt.
Yes, sure.
The specified time, what you told us, September 2020 for getting registered.
Correct.
If both the tenant and landlord wish to not register, what will happen in future? Is there any mandatory to get registered or?
Yes, it is mandatory. There is no doubt it is mandatory. but the judgment of the High Court which I referred comes as a breather for landlords. So even
in
if it
case
is
in
not,
future
if it
if
is
they
not
get any
registered,
dispute,
yes, but you can invoke
this
only
will come.
the statutory provisions for eviction. Section 21 alone you can invoke for seeking eviction. Other grounds you want to enforce the terms of the agreement, you cannot.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Mr. Vikram Jain?
Yes. Hello, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, Vikram.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Morning, Vikram.
Sir, now we have option of registering the act. Registering the agreement under the Stamp Act as well as the Rent Control Act, the new act.
Registration Act.
Or
Registration
it is
Act.
mandatory.
Yes, both. No, that is separate. This is separate. See, under the Registration Act, you will have to pay stamp duty, which is the stamp duty I referred to, 0.25% for residential, 1% for non-residential. With the rent authority, it is only 100 rupees.
Yeah, so the registry under the Registration Act is not compulsory.
If it is compulsory, if it is required under the registration law. Suppose it exceeds a period of 11 months. It has to be registered before the registration authorities and also before the rent authority.
Okay, sir. And now, sir, I have one more doubt, sir.
Yes.
Now, with respect to, say, there are matters where the rent authority does not pass orders after the application is filed. So, in that case, we will have to approach the rent court, say, or it will be a writ directing them to pass an orders. Rent authority.
An order, the appeal to the rent court contemplates an order. So, when there is no order passed, as you say, you will have to only approach a High Court under 227.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
So next, Mr. Venkateshan Rajagopal.
Yes.
He had asked a question whether Section 40 bars a suit by the tenant seeking injunction for eviction under due process of law.
No, it does not bar. See, as I told you, the bar of civil jurisdiction is only in matters which are covered squarely under the Rent Act. What is not provided under the Rent Act, you can always file a suit for injunction for not to dispossess except by due process of law. There is no bar.
Okay, so we have one more question. This is from Advocate Rajashekaran. Is there a provision for online mediations or online arbitration proceedings if the tenancy agreement has the ADR clause in it?
See, this is again a very double-edged issue. Arbitration Act will be overridden by the provisions of the Rent Act. So even assuming there is an arbitration clause, the provisions of the Rent Act will prevail, being a special enactment. So, but again, the Supreme Court is now seized of the matter, where they have referred it to a larger bench with regard to an issue whether the arbitration law will coexist or will not be prevailed. All these issues are at large before the larger bench of the Supreme Court. But as of now, insofar as rent control eviction matters, the Rent Court alone will have exclusive jurisdiction. Therefore, there is no question of arbitrating or online mediation. But mediation is always open. Parties can always mediate. If both parties are willing to mediate, there is no bar to mediate. But arbitration is doubtful.
Okay. Next, we have Gayatri.
Yes.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
Sir, there is this question where the parent is being fixed by the old act. Under the old act, I have a parent fixed.
Okay.
And the landlord prefers goes under the new act for the eviction proceeding, stating that he wants a higher rent or even asking for a higher rent. So, if I'm going to give up my parent proceedings, can I go under the new act, or can I? How does it work when you have the order under the old act where it's parent and the new act where you're going to ask for a higher rent?
You cannot ask for a higher rent under the new act. Unless you have an agreement, there is no question of asking for higher rent. There must be a valid agreement in place for you to say after the end of the period, give me higher rent. Therefore, your landlord will be better off pursuing the fair rent, which already has in place.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Rajaram has a question.
Yes.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
I have one doubt, sir.
Yes,
Suppose the tenant in the joint family property, sir, without knowing the joint family property, he entered an agreement with the co-partner, leaving other co-partners. Whether that agreement is valid under the new Rent Act?
See, I told you landlord need not be the owner. So if the agreement is between the one of the co-partner and the tenant is bound by that. There may be dispute between the co-partner and other co-partners. That's a different issue. Will be tackled in the civil court. If the tenant admits the Rajaram is my landlord, he does not know about the brothers of Rajaram. There is a dispute. He can approach the rent authority and say, "No, there is a bona fide dispute. I didn't know the property was owned by Rajaram and his brothers. I entered into agreement only with Mr. Rajaram. Therefore, I will deposit the rents before the authority. Let them decide the dispute and come back." That is one scope. The other thing is a contract between you and the tenant. The tenant cannot wriggle out. So the two views are possible. Tenant cannot wriggle out of the contract because for the tenant, you are the landlord. You need not be the owner. So therefore, the agreement will be valid in my view.
Suppose what is the rights of the co-partner, sir?
They will have to file a suit for partition or get them implicated in this question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Krishna Raj has a question.
Yes, Krishna Raj.
Yeah, good morning, Balaji.
Morning.
A very nice session. Balaji, am I audible?
Hi, now
am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, section 21, subsection 2, clause B. That the tenant has not paid the arrears in full, rent payable and other charges payable as specified in subsection 1 of section 13 for 2 months, including rent for delayed payment, as may be specified for in tenancy agreement or as prescribed, as the case may be, within 1 month of notice of demand for the arrears of such rent and all charges, so and so, and subsection 4 of 106 of the PB Act. Okay. Here I have a doubt.
Yes.
Here it tells 1 month. So suppose I issue a notice for 15 days. And if I wait for a period of another 45 days, then file a case. Is it okay on my part?
Yes, it is fine. You are well within your rights to give him that leverage. But the Act itself says he has 30 days to pay up the arrears.
So that's what I'm telling you. When I issue a notice for a period of 15 days in my notice, not telling that within a period of 1 month, I'm not telling that within a period of 30 days. I'm telling within a period of 1 week or 15 days. And then without, he is not paying.
1 week you cannot give.
I wait a period of another 15 days or 30 days and then file a case. I am right on my to file a case.
15 days. 15 days notice is mandatory because section 106 will have to be followed.
I've issued a notice.
Then thereafter you can wait
Balaji,
for
I'm
1
not audible. Balaji, I'm not able to hear you.
After the notice, you can wait for 30 days. Hello?
I think
connection is offline.
I'll just quickly read the question in the chat.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a question from Advocate Suresh Khanna. Is there any specification that the registration fees shall be shared by landlord and tenant?
The Act does not say anything, but it is only proper that it is shared equally because the duty is on both the parties to the contract. So even at the time of negotiations, you must make it clear that the expenses will be borne 50-50.
Next, Shambhavi has a question.
Yes.
Okay, I'll just read it out. Sir, the agreement for
residential
was entered before the new act came into existence, not registered and not even renewed. Now the landlord wants her house for her own
occupancy. Yes.
Which forum should be moved?
She cannot go under the old act because the act has been repealed and no proceedings are pending. She can only approach the rent court under 21(2)(a, saying that there is no tenancy agreement. On that ground, seek eviction.
Sir, this is Prakash here. Excellent session, sir. I would kind request, sir, if you could share the document the way you shared for bill.
Yes, I'm preparing it. I will be doing it in the course of the day.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, sir. Thanks.
Hello, Balaji.
Morning, sir.
Krishna Raj, Advocate Balaji.
Yes.
I did not follow the answer, Malaji.
No, see, you must give a statutory notice under section 106 of the TP Act.
That is, you mean to say that we have to wait for a period of 1 month?
Yes, you have to wait.
So that's what I'm asking you. Whether can I give a notice for a period of 15 days and then wait for a period of 1 month, then file a case?
Yes, better. Because otherwise, before you file the case, then it is going to pay up the arrears.
Yeah, yes. Thank you, Balaji. Thank you.
Mr. Akash has a question.
Yes.
Who will be bearing the registration charges under the Tenancy Act? If the landlord refuses to bear the same, then what will be the remedy for the tenant?
See, the act is silent with regard to who should bear. Therefore, your tenant is in dire need of registration, he has to bear. He may not be able to. That is why I said if the agreement itself includes a clause that it will be borne 50-50, at least the tenant can recover that 50% from the landlord. Otherwise, it's going to be a wild goose chase. He may not get that 50%.
So next we have, I'll just finish it with one question.
Yes.
Sir, if the landlord or tenant not willing for any registration,
okay.
Therefore, is there any
problem in future? What will happen?
Yes. Question from Mr. Gautam.
Is that mandatory? Tenant entered agreement for 3 years. Yes, it is mandatory. Section 4 mandates agreement to be not only in writing but also registered. So if there is a failure to enter into an agreement, 21(2)(a is the only option to both parties.
Okay. I think Mr. Shankar had a question. Shankar? Mr. Shankar?
One Vidya has asked a question. New Act is not applicable to village panchayats. Act will govern the TP Act. You have to seek eviction under section 106, issue a notice and file a suit for recovery of possession under the TP Act.
Okay.
Any provision for landlord tenant to register the agreement online? Yes, the registration process is online. The website is, you can go to Google and just type TNHUD, Tamil Nadu Housing Urban Department, TNHUD. It will straight away take you to the website of the portal of the Tenancy Act, www.tenancy.org.in. So there you just type TNHUD, you will be taken to the straight away. You can fill in the details, the forms will be there. Make e-payment of 100 rupees. Your agreement details will be logged into and you will be given a temporary confirmation. Thereafter, formal registration number will be issued. It is only an online process. You need not go to the sub-registrar's office. Is it necessary to register the tenancy under both acts? Yes. It is necessary to register under both the old before the sub-registrar under the Registration Act and also before the Rent Authority under this Act. I think all questions have been answered. I think no more questions in the chat box. So any other questions? 2 new questions have come. Fees 2.25, yes, for residential. For residential leases, it is 0.25%. For provided it is leased within 5 years, less than 5 years, up to 5 years. More than that, it is 1%. For non-residential, it is 1% for any period.
Okay. Am I audible, sir? I'm Shankar.
Yes, you are audible. Yes.
Yeah, sir. I have a question. It's regarding section 18C, sir.
Yes.
On property manager.
Yes.
The section says the company can also be a property manager.
Correct.
Can you throw some light onto it, sir?
There are companies which offer this service. See, you take OMR or Mahindra City. Properties are owned by non-resident Indians. Landlords are not in a position to personally take care of what is happening. Therefore, certain companies do it as a business. They form a company for the object will be to deal with properties of other persons, let out, collect rents, file eviction cases. So the company can be authorized to be the property manager. That is what it means.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
So
sir.
I have a question.
Yes.
Chat box Ms. Manusmriti's question. Section
Yes.
23, compensation rent for failure to vacate.
Correct.
Whether landlord can get interim order or only order is possible. That's her question.
I think it should be read as only a final order. It doesn't seem to be an interim order because it contemplates termination of tenancy by order, notice, agreement, as the case may be. So I doubt whether you can seek it as an interim order. It will have to be gone into as a matter of evidence of trial.
Okay, so thank you.
Otherwise you're going to have a trial within a trial, so it's not going to be conducive. I have one more question here from Mr. AGN. Already RCOP eviction for owner's occupation of the old act pending. Can we withdraw it and call the tenant to come for agreement for a specific time period? After the period can be evicted as per the agreement. Yes, it is a possibility. It's up to you. If you want to give up the right, suppose you have not a 50-50 case, you're better off getting a higher rent, you can definitely resort to this method, withdraw the case, enter into a fresh agreement for a specific period and come under the new act thereon. It is possible. The tenant can take immunity by saying landlord has not come forward either willing for registration or not. It is not an immunity. See, it is only a contract. Contract requires two hands to come together. When one hand is inside the pocket, the other hand cannot say, no, you force the other hand out of the pocket. Basically, the act respects the agreement and contract between the parties. In the absence of a contract, you will have to face the consequences. So it's better to negotiate with the landlord and try to ensure that you have an agreement in place for whatever period you want or intend to stay in the property.
Sir, it's Shankar, sir.
Yes.
Sir, it's been a pleasure having you today, sir. It's rather an enlightenment lecture.
Most welcome.
I think we have learned a lot from this today, sir.
Most welcome.
Thanks for everything. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Yes, thank you for everybody who have attended this session. We'll have another session tomorrow with a different topic.